Hi everyone, Allie here from the Family Maple. Today I have the second in my 10x5 solo challenge series ranking videos for you. If you haven't watched the first video, I will link it in the description below so you can check it out and learn a little bit about the first 10 games that I played in 2020 solo as part of the challenge. I set 3 solo challenges for myself, each of them spanning 4 months, and each of them consisting of 10 games in which I tried to play them 5 times each. So 3 10x5 challenges for solo games. The first challenge ran from January through April, and those games, like I said, are in the video before this. You can check out the link. In this one, we're going to be talking about the second set of 10 games that I played from May through August, which are the 10 games that you see sitting right here. So on this video, I'm going to rank these 10 games based on how much I enjoyed them for solo play specifically. It's not necessarily the same order that I would rank these for multiplayer games, but we're just going to talk about my solo play experience. So I'm going to clear out the table and we will be right back with number 10. Okay, to kick us off, starting at number 10 is Cellulose, a plant cell biology game from Genius Games. It was designed by Steve Schlephost and John Covey. John Covey also contributed to Genotype, which was on my earlier list if you want to check that out. So Cellulose is a worker placement game based on the science and biology of plant cells. And in Cellulose, you are going to be doing primarily worker placement as well as a little bit of area control and a little bit of set collection as well in some cards that you can draft and use for different scoring objectives. Cellulose typically plays from 1 to 5 players out of the box. This is the retail edition of the game. And the multiplayer game, you are going to be placing out your workers on each round to take actions. You're primarily collecting resources in order to turn those resources into either different types of resources or to take different actions. One of the main things that you'll be doing is collecting water and using water to contribute to the cell health. I did not read up on all of the science, although they do include that in the box. So forgive me if I get some of the terms wrong, but you will be collecting water, collecting CO2, turning them into carbohydrates, and collecting enzymes and all types of different plant cell bits and pieces. For the solo game, you are playing with an AI opponent, which is card driven, which is one of my favorite solo modes for games, in that you will be competing against an AI for a specific score and you will know if you win or lose. Typically AI card driven modes work very well in worker placement games because the AI is going to be flipping over a card and placing out a worker and blocking that space for you, or in the case of Cellulose, in many places just making it less lucrative for you. So as the AI puts their worker out, then the amount of water that you're able to collect starts going down, and at some point, if you haven't gone out and collected water, you won't be able to collect any water because it's all been exhausted for the round. They'll also be contributing to pushing the time clock of the game forward by building carbohydrates into the plant cell walls and taking other actions to increase their end game points. I did really enjoy Cellulose, and it is one that I would recommend to people who are looking for good science-themed games. If you're doing any sort of game schooling, homeschooling, if you are running a game club at high school or even probably a middle school, it's not a super complex game. This would work really well, and you would be able to dig into the science behind the game with the information that's included in the box. For me, the solo mode played fine. The difficulty levels were fine. It presented a pretty good challenge, but the theme and the aesthetic didn't really pull me in, which is why this one is coming in at the bottom of the list. It was a good game. I did enjoy it. It's not one that's going to be staying in the collection. I will be passing this on to someone else, and hopefully they will get a chance to play it. I would recommend giving it a try, but just not one that I'm going to keep around for solo. So coming in at number 10 is Cellulose. Number 9 is Creature Comforts from Kids Table Board Games designed by Roberta Taylor. Creature Comforts is another worker placement game, and in this one it's a combination of a traditional worker placement and a dice worker placement game. Dice worker placement tends to be one of my favorite mechanisms in games, so I was keen to check out this new release from Kids Table Board Games. Creature Comforts plays out of the box 1 to 5 players, and similar to most of the games that I play solo that you'll see on these challenges, the solo mode works just like the multiplayer game does, in that you will just be playing with the base rules. For the solo mode, there are actually no additional rules for the solo mode, with the exception of removing duplicate cards from some of the decks and removing cards that really only work with multiplayer interaction. Other than that, you will just play the game as the only player at the table, and at the end you will see how high you scored and how you did as far as crafting comforts or building improvements and different aspects. That way it will give you a specific score at the end based on several different factors. So in Creature Comforts, you are going to start out by rolling 2 family dice, which you know you will have to use during the worker placement phase. After you've rolled your 2 family dice, you will place your workers out to different locations, and each of the locations has a specific dice requirement in order to fulfill it successfully and be able to collect the rewards at the location or to perform the action of that location. Once you've actually placed out all of your workers for the round, then you will roll the 4 community dice that are in the center, and you will have those 4 community dice and your 2 family dice to use during the round. Then you can use those dice and assign them to the worker spaces that you've already selected with your little animal meeples, and any locations that you can't successfully fulfill will earn you a lesson learned token that you can use later to adjust the pips on the dice, either plus or minus 1. So once you've allocated all of your dice, you will take the actions of the spaces in any order that you want to. You will be collecting resources, you will be trading in resources of one type for another resource. You'll be using specific action spaces based on visitors that come each round and will vary up the game. So they'll do different things. They'll let you make specific different trades based on their particular character. You will be crafting comforts. You can craft soups and bread and toboggans to go sledding, or socks and scarves and board games and toys and all kinds of things that you would want to have in your house to prepare for the winter. And then you can also craft improvements, which will allow you to use different abilities throughout the game to make things easier as you move forward. The game plays out over a set number of rounds. You can make a determination on how many rounds you want to play, either a short or a long game. When playing solo, it doesn't really matter. I just always played the long game because it was only, I think, 9 rounds, and it goes pretty quickly with solo, and you're the only one playing. And it's a gorgeous game. I really enjoyed it. It plays really quickly. It's very relaxing. It's maybe not one that I will be pulling out all the time for solo. It's a little bit light for me from a solo gaming perspective, but because I do have 2 young daughters in the house, this is one that we're going to be keeping around as part of our KTBG collection of games. I have really enjoyed most of their games, and we have quite a few in the collection that the girls and I enjoy playing together. My oldest daughter has played this with me as well, multiplayer, and it does really well for her age group, which is she's almost 9. So coming in at number 9 is Creature Comforts. And if you do have family, or if you have kids that are in that sort of 8 to 9, 10, 11-year-old range who would like to play solo games or are starting to get into solo games, this is one I would highly recommend for those younger players or lighter weight gamers. Number 8 is Otys from Pearl Games, designed by Claude Lucchini. Otys is it's an interesting game. I would consider that the primary mechanic in here is programming. So in Otys, the solo mode plays exactly like the multiplayer game. So I'll just sort of describe the multiplayer game first. In Otys, you will have a dual layer board with divers that are arranged from the top, which is considered the surface, down to the bottom, which are considered the divers that are below the surface and exploring the underwaters. And on your turn, you are going to select one of the 5 rows which are underwater and where you have divers, and you will select that row to take the action of the diver that's there. So each diver represents a different action that you can take on your turn. In addition to the diver's action, before you do that step, you will have a bonus action that you'll be able to activate based on a central board that is numbered 1 through 5. And there are ways to manipulate the order of the bonus actions that are on that central board, as well as the divers that are on your main player board. So you will take a bonus action, and then you will slide this little token across to activate your diver, and you'll activate your diver tile. And then once you're done activating your diver tile, the diver will be moved up to the top, and everyone will be moved down a level within your player board. The row indicator, the marker that you use to activate the diver, will then be moved to the bottom of your player board as exhausted, and you won't be able to use it again for the next round. Depending on the actions that you've taken, there are ways to mitigate your divers not having to return to the surface, or be able to manipulate moving your divers up or down levels before you take your actions and adjusting things that way. There's also ways to retrieve your action markers more quickly so that you can take 2 or 3 actions before you can reclaim all of your markers, so that you can take the same level action multiple times more quickly. It's definitely a puzzly game. There's a lot of different moving pieces that you have to think about. If I take this action now, how is that going to impact what's on the main board? How is that going to impact where my divers are positioned? And the reason you're doing all of these actions is to eventually collect resources of specific types on a specific level of your player board in order to turn them in to fulfill contracts and earn victory points. So that's how you're going to play. And in the solo mode, it is kind of a beat your own score, but it's more of a race to beat a timer. And you will play the game just as you would in a multiplayer game. And at the beginning, you will set 2 of the unused player score markers on the track at specific locations. And every turn, after you take your turn, you will move one of the 2 markers down towards you on the score track. And as they move down, they may run into spaces that have a resource on them, which will impact you and make you remove objective cards or adjust the market in some way, and kind of tweak the game state to semi-mimic another player being involved in making changes to it. And once one of the tokens either meets or crosses your score counter at a location, then that one is removed from the game. And then from then on out, you only have 1 score marker to keep moving down. And the objective is to reach 19, I think it's 17, 18, 19, somewhere in there, 17 points before that second marker gets crossed and the game is ended. So it's It's an interesting game, and it's one that I definitely enjoyed playing. This is one that I have not had the opportunity to play as a multiplayer game yet, but I would like to try it multiplayer and see how it feels, and if it feels kind of the same as the solo version or not. I do like the puzzling nature, and you'll learn that about me, that I do enjoy games that have this puzzly aspect of sitting there and trying to figure out, if I do this on this turn, then I can do this on my next turn, and sort of planning out your game, as far in advance as you possibly can with the information that's given to you. So Otys is super fun. It has a lot of different sort of like tweaks that you can make to some of the action tiles. The action tiles on the main board will change from round to round, so you're not quite sure what combination you'll have out there. Some games you may be able to take actions and do things that you can't do in another game because the tile simply wasn't used. So Otys is good. I really liked playing it solo. It is one that I will pull out and play solo again. It's fairly quick to play. It can play in about 30 minutes solo, and I like the double layer boards and just that fun mechanic of moving your divers up and down, and when do you, spend resources to leave them where they're at, and when do you just let them go up to the top and figure out what to do from there. So if you haven't checked it out, Otys is one I recommend giving a try. Number 7 is The Isle of Cats Explore and Draw, designed by Frank West and published by the City of Games. The Isle of Cats Explore and Draw is a flip and write version, smaller version of the original game, The Isle of Cats by Frank West. The Isle of Cats does play solo as well, and it is in our collection. It's on the shelf above where you can see on the shelves behind me. But the Isle of Cats Explore and Draw is a much smaller box version for anyone who's familiar with the original Isle of Cats. It takes up a good amount of shelf space, and this is just a smaller version in a flip and write style. The Explore and Draw, from what I recall, was developed in part during the COVID pandemic to allow people to play the Isle of Cats, a version of it, remotely. So you could print out a sheet for the Isle of Cats and then play using this card flip mechanic. The solo version in the Explore and Draw game works very similarly to the way that it works in the original base game. So you will be playing the game primarily the way that you would if you're playing multiplayer, with the exception of, in a multiplayer game, you are only concerned with what you are doing. You are only concerned with how the cats that you are drafting impact your end game score, the objective cards that you've taken, the lesson cards that you've taken, and how you're building out your different cat families of different colors. In the solo game, you will be playing against an AI opponent, which is called your sister. So your sister is trying to take credit for all of the work that you've been doing in rescuing cats from the island and putting them onto your boat. And she will do so by claiming points for cat families on your boat, for different objective cards that she has, and she will compete against you at the end to see who has the most points. Similar to in the base game, if you have played that one, the sister AI will have 5 different colors of cats that she will have laid out, and over the first 5 rounds you will flip one of them, and the first cat that's flipped in round 1, for every one of those on your boat, she's going to get 5 points, and then the second one 4, and then 3, and then 2, and then 1. So you're working in those first few rounds with partial information about what cats your sister wants to collect and you should try to avoid on your boat. And similar to in the base game, this solo mode is all about maximizing your own points while simultaneously trying to minimize the points that you are giving to your sister. And it is extremely challenging to do. Inevitably, the best choices for maximizing your points are typically going to give points to your sister as well, which you would rather not do, but sometimes there's no way to avoid it. In Explore and Draw, you are going to be drawing patterns polyomino patterns onto a dry erase boat board that you'll have in front of you, and you will draw patterns based on a display of cards. And each round you will select cards from a specific, I believe it's a column, and you will have 3 cards that you get to select. So often they will be cats that you'll be drawing in different colors on your board. They can also be lesson plans, lessons which are objective cards, which you will check off on your sheet to say that you've collected that lesson. It'll typically be things like fill the 2 captains' rooms on either side of the boat and earn a certain number of points, or have a certain number of cat families. There's all different types of lesson plans that you can get. And then throughout the game, you'll have the opportunity to take 3 bonus actions that you can use once per game. One of them is you can select a row of 4 cards instead of a column of 3 cards. There's one that lets you take cards from different columns during the round, or there's ones that let you draw a treasure or a cat, again, that you've already drawn. So I very much enjoyed the Explore and Draw game. If I had to pick, I would probably take this one over the original base game, just because it is so small, so portable. It's easy to get to the table. It's very quick to play, very quick to set up, tear down. It's just a breeze. If you like flip and write or roll and write games, and you're looking for something that has that same fun feel of the polyomino tile placement, this is definitely one that I would recommend you checking out. It's great for families as well if you're not going to be playing solo, and it plays very similarly to the family version of the Isle of Cats. So if you're a fan of the Isle of Cats and you're looking for a travel-sized version of it, or something in the flip and write genre, I highly recommend checking out the Isle of Cats Explore and Draw. Coming in at number 6 is Dune Imperium, designed by Paul Dennen and published by Direwolf Games. Dune Imperium is another worker placement game, and it also features a bit of area control, area majority, as well as a bit of deck building. Dune Imperium is a game that I was gifted for Mother's Day in 2021, and the theme really doesn't speak to me at all. I was surprised that this was picked out by my husband, who is a Dune fan, and I figured maybe that was part of the reason. It could also be that in our house I watch a lot of board game content, and Dune Imperium was the talk of the town in 2021. Everyone was raving about how great the game was. So I put Dune Imperium on my second solo challenge so that I could get it to the table quite a bit solo and see how I liked it. The solo mode for Dune Imperium works very similarly to the way that the 2-player variant works for Dune Imperium. Because the game does feature area control, area majority aspects to it, it is a difficult game to play with less than 3 players, because you don't have that same level of tension and competition of who's going to be going into those area control spaces, how heavy are they going to go into it on this round, and you're competing for awards in that area control space. So the 2-player mode introduces a digital app that was released from Direwolf as part of this game, and the solo mode also uses the same app. So the solo mode app, you can actually play it without the app. You can play it solo. It does include a deck of cards. I have actually never played it with the deck of cards because the solo mode app works so well, and it's free, and it just simulates the deck of cards for you. You don't have to shuffle it. You don't have to manage it, any of that. The app also integrates the actions that are outlined on the card, so it will give you check boxes which you can actually physically check off to show that you've done the different actions that the AI character will take, which I really like about the AI app. It also will help you to more quickly cycle through the market of cards for the deck building aspect of it, which is nice, that isn't actually in the original deck of cards that's in the box. So in Dune Imperium, with the solo AI app feature, you will play against 2 different AI opponents, and they will be on your left and right. The turn order will pass just like it does in a multiplayer game, and they very well simulate a multiplayer game. So each round, the AI players will go out and block off different spaces on the planet, or any of the faction alliance spaces as well, and then you won't be able to go there. So similar to a multiplayer game, they will start blocking you out, and inevitably they will always go to the one space where you don't want them to go. They will also compete with you in the area control, area majority phase of the game. They will be constantly deploying their troops into combat and competing for those rewards. They will collect some of the resources throughout the game, and when they collect a certain number of resources, they will gain a point. Dune Imperium plays out as a race to 10 points to trigger the end of the game. The first to 10 triggers the end of the game, and then the person with the most points at the end will be the winner. The AI opponents are very quick to start racking up those points as they collect resources through winning combats, or as they drive up fairly quickly on the different faction alliance tracks. They will earn points that way as well. I have found that the solo mode is very challenging in Dune Imperium. It does feel you get that same pressure of playing a multiplayer game and a solo game where they're just kind of creeping up, and then it starts ramping up towards the end of the game where people are earning 1 or 2 points in those last couple of rounds. And it is hard to beat. It's not one that you are going to win every time. In fact, I think you would probably be more inclined to lose more games than you win, but it's always a challenge to see, can I build an efficient deck where it lets me go to the locations that I want to, or what kind of path am I going to try to push towards for victory. So Dune Imperium has been actually quite a bit of fun. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed this one. And if you're a Dune fan, or if you just like that combination of worker placement, area control, a little bit of deck building, this is one to definitely check out. So Dune Imperium, number 6. Number 5 is Dinosaur Island, designed by Jonathan Gilmour and Brian Lewis and published by Pandasaurus Games. Dinosaur Island is actually an older game that I picked up primarily for solo play. I loved the look of the box and the theme. Growing up in the 80s and 90s, Jurassic Park was a big part of my sort of childhood and growing up, and that thought of building out your dinosaur park and making sure that your dinosaurs don't eat the patrons at your park was just so fun for me, and it was one that I wanted to add to our collection. The original Dinosaur Island does include a solo mode with some solo mode cards, and I have played that original solo mode in previous years, and it's okay. It's an alright solo mode. It's not my favorite, and when I found out that the Totally Liquid expansion for the game, for the Extreme Edition, introduced a new solo mode featuring AI cards and utilizing some of the modules from the Totally Liquid expansion, I decided to pick that up. So this is just the base game box for the Extreme Edition for Dinosaur Island, but I do have the Totally Liquid expansion, and that is the solo mode that I used for my solo challenge playthroughs. Dinosaur Island is another worker placement game. It's, like I said, it's a mechanic that I enjoy, so you'll see quite a few worker placement games in my list and the games that I play in my collection. It features worker placement. It also features some resource management in gathering and spending DNA to build dinosaurs in your park. It also requires some planning for risk mitigation. You need to make sure that your security levels are high enough up. If you're playing with some of the different modules, you're looking at a little bit of set collection as well. There's a bunch of different mechanics going on, but I would say the primary one is going to be worker placement. The game plays over 4 different phases in which you will go out and research dinosaurs, either dinosaur DNA or dinosaur recipes, or just researching your dinosaur DNA and increasing your cold storage limits. So you'll do the research phase first. You'll have 3 markers that you can place out and take 3 actions. Then you'll move into phase 2, which is the market phase, where you can buy upgrades to your dinosaur laboratory, or you can hire assistants or specialists to work in your park, and you can build attractions to put into your dinosaur park as well. So food attractions, ride attractions, merchandise attractions, which all provide you locations for patrons that are visiting your park to go into and visit in addition to the dinosaur exhibits themselves. Then in phase 3, you're going to do another worker placement action selection phase where you have a certain number of workers in your park, which you can increase by hiring specialists which come with additional workers. And it will allow you to go out and do things like create dinosaurs using the DNA you've collected, increase your security, increase the size of your dinosaur paddocks, and earn income, all kinds of different actions that you can take to start working on your park. And then in phase 4, you will actually have patrons come and visit your park. All of the patrons that you pull out of the little bag that they include are going to pay entry into the park. So that's one of the primary ways that you're going to earn income in order to purchase upgrades and do other things throughout the game. And then you will place out all of the patrons that come to your park into different locations and score victory points for how many you actually have space to welcome into your park. There's also a little bit of push your luck in that there are pink hooligan meeples in the bag, and they will cut in line and come into the park first, but they will not pay and they will not give you any victory points. They also are the last ones to get eaten if your security level is too low and any of your dinosaurs escape and eat the patrons. You will lose points in that use case if you have any of your patrons eaten, and so that's something you want to avoid. The solo mode that's included in the Totally Liquid expansion is a card-driven solo mode, and it does have an opponent that you're playing against, and that opponent will get a park board, which they will build out based on a blueprint plan from the expansion. And the solo mode in the expansion plays over a campaign. And so you'll play over several different what they call AICEO players, and they will incorporate different modules from the Totally Liquid expansion into each of the different plays. You don't have to play with the campaign mode, but I did play through the campaign as part of the solo challenge. It has 5 different scenarios in the campaign, and I was actually able to play through all 5 of them. That is probably the one complaint that I had about the solo mode in this game, is that the AI opponent actually felt quite easy, and I was playing on either medium or hard mode in most of my plays, and I didn't find it overly challenging to beat the AI. In fact, in the plays for this challenge, I did not lose any of the 5 scenarios for the solo mode. I think there's some things that you could do to increase the difficulty of the solo mode on this one, but ultimately this still came in for me at number 5. I really enjoy this game. I love the worker placement aspects. I enjoy the planning of the park, and I just very much enjoy playing this game. So being able to play it solo, even though it's not a huge challenge to win with the objectives that are in there, it still was very enjoyable. So if you like Dinosaur Island already, or you are a fan of worker placement, then this is one to check out. One thing to note, though, is that the solo AI cards from the Totally Liquid expansion are only in the Kickstarter Extreme Edition. You can print them for free from Pandasaurus online if you have the retail version of the game, but you will have to print the cards out, and no matter which version you get, you do have to print the solo rules yourself. So just keep that in mind. But my number 5, Dinosaur Island. Number 4 is Libertalia Winds of Galecrest, published by Stonemaier Games and designed by Paolo Mori. Libertalia Winds of Galecrest is actually a second edition of the original Libertalia, which was a pirate-themed game with simultaneous card play. Libertalia Winds of Galecrest is essentially the same game. It has updated artwork and some updated rules and kind of tweaks to the game that Stonemaier worked on with Paolo Mori for the second edition. And one of the things that was added to the second edition was a solo mode from the Automa Factory. The Automa Factory solo version plays very similarly to the multiplayer game, and it does attempt to simulate sort of a 2.5 to 3 player game. And I say 2.5 because there's one kind of dummy character who doesn't earn anything. You're not competing against them in any way. They are not getting a score, but they are going to throw cards out and mess you up. So Libertalia is, like I said, a simultaneous card action selection game. And you will have a hand of cards with varying abilities in front of you to pick from on each round. So on each round, you're going to select a card from your hand and play it out onto the island. The AI character has a deck of cards that are the same characters that you have in your hand of cards, with slight variations on powers to allow it to work for a dummy player where they're not going to be making any decisions really about anything. And then you will determine which card the AI is going to play by first drawing a card off the top of the AI deck, which you will play onto the island as a pilferer, which is the sort of half player who's just going to go out and camp out on the island and take up a spot. And then based on the next card that's on the top of the deck, it will give you guidelines on how to play the AI card from the options that are available. It will depend on the value of the treasures that are up for grabs that day. And so the better the treasures are, the more likely the AI is to play a card that either will attack you or will have a high value rank so that they can select the treasures first. Once that card's been drawn, it'll tell you which card to play for the AI. You'll play that one onto the island, and all of the cards that are on the island will be arranged from lowest number to highest number, and then you'll go through and take the actions of the cards just like you would in a multiplayer game, from left to right, and then you'll come back through from right to left and collect the treasure tokens, and then move the characters for yourself and the AI into your ships for that turn. And that will repeat over several rounds over 3 voyages, and you will be collecting doubloons, and the person at the end with the most coins, the most gold, wins. It's a very, very, very simple solo game, and I think the way that the Automa Factory has incorporated the solo for that simultaneous card play action selection is just ingenious. It's extremely smooth. The rules are very clear on how to play those cards, what the AI will do when they play each of the cards. And because you are playing with those AI decks of card draws, the AI player will inevitably do the exact thing that you didn't want them to do that round, which I think is so much fun. I have not played this one, the original, or this new version as multiplayer. I have only played this solo, but it is very quick to play. It is very easy to pick up and learn. It doesn't require a lot of overhead, and I really enjoyed playing Libertalia Winds of Galecrest. I would recommend it if you are looking for a simultaneous action selection card game that plays solo. If you don't have a large group to play with, but you're looking for that same feel, this is certainly one that I would check out. Libertalia. Number 3 is the Grand Carnival, designed by Rob Kramer and published by Uproarious Games and Fowers Games. The Grand Carnival is a polyomino and square tile placement game about building out a carnival grounds with attractions and barkers and patrons. So in the Grand Carnival, you are actually going to be building up 2 layers of tiles on your player board. You will be building out first the foundation for your park or your carnival, which will include foundation tiles, building locations that'll show a mallet or a hammer, and then green grass locations, which are the fairgrounds where your patrons can come in and walk through your carnival. You can actually build these in different orders, so you can build out the foundations just enough to fit one of your attractions, or you can build out all of the fairgrounds first and plan it out that way. But typically you're going to do a little bit of both, of build out the foundations and then build an attraction, build out some more foundations, build some more attractions. The solo mode plays very similarly to the multiplayer game, but not exactly the same. And the primary difference between the solo mode and the multiplayer mode is actually how you are going to score at the end. The mechanics and how you're going to take your turns works exactly the same. You will have 5 action markers on the side of your board, and they will be associated to values 1 through 5. And on your turn, you can take one of 3 actions with one of your action markers. You can select and place a foundation tile. You can select and place an attraction tile, or you can move patrons either in from the entry into your carnival grounds, or move them in through your carnival grounds from anywhere where they may have previously stopped. So you will take one of those 3 actions, and the strength of that action is going to be dependent on which of your 5 markers you use. If you use the number 5 marker, then you can select a number 5, a size 5 attraction to add to your park, or you can move one of your patrons up to 5 spaces. If you use the level 1, then you're only going to be able to build a level 1 or move up to 1 space, a single space. And in the solo mode, you are going to score a little bit differently, and you will actually get negative points for quite a few things in the solo mode, and your goal is actually just to get a positive score at the end of it. You will also have objective cards that are set out at the beginning. In a normal multiplayer game, they are claimed by the players as they complete them. And if a player completes an objective card, every other player has one more turn, their next turn, to also complete that objective in order to gain the benefits from it. If they don't, then they can't claim it later on. In the solo mode, the objective cards are assigned to 3 of the days within the 7 rounds that you'll be playing out. And if you have not completed it by the end of that day, then it goes away and you can't complete it. You will earn points for completing the objective card, so it is one thing that you're going to want to push for while you're playing the game, is complete those objectives as quickly as you can. The Grand Carnival is a game that I was anticipating based on the solo review from Carl over at Purple Moose Plays. And when I picked up my copy and tried it solo, I really found it to be an enjoyable and relaxing experience. It was the first one on this solo 10x10 or 10x5 challenge that I pulled off the shelf and just basically knocked out the 5 games back to back. You can play once and then reset and play again, and reset and play again. You can play it out in probably about 15 to 20 minutes per round is probably doable. If you like to take things a little bit at a more relaxed pace and take your time, then it might play longer than that, but it's very quick, it's very snappy. You get 5 actions, there's 7 rounds, and then that's it, you're done. So 35 actions throughout the whole game, and then you'll add up your scores. The artwork is super cute, the theme is really fun. I definitely enjoy these kind of carnival themed games, and I really like tile placement games. This is one that will be staying in my collection. I have back to pick up the expansion that will be coming out, I believe, sometime next year, that will add some additional elements and modules that you can mix in and switch things up to add some more variety. But if you like tile placement games and you're looking for something that you can play solo by yourself and really have a good time with it, the Grand Carnival is one that I would highly recommend. Coming in at number 2 is Coimbra, published by Eggert Spiel and designed by Virginio Gigli and Flaminia Brasini. I apologize if I got your names wrong, but this is Coimbra. And Coimbra is the only game on this list that I included as part of my solo challenge that did not have a publisher included solo in the box. So Coimbra in the box from the publisher is going to play between 2 to 4 players, does not include a solo mode. The solo mode that I used for the solo challenge actually came from the Board Game Geek website and can be found in the forums. If anyone is interested, I will include a link to the solo mode in the description below so you can check it out. The solo mode that I used for Coimbra is a card-based AI mode. So you are actually competing against an AI player who is run by a deck of cards. And in Coimbra, you are going to be drafting dice and purchasing and drafting cards and trying to earn the most victory points through competition on different prestige tracks that you're moving up, through different objectives that you're scoring in the monastery path on the board, and from completing different voyages on the bottom of the board where you are trying to complete specific objectives to earn points at the end of the game. There's quite a bit of set collection in this game that I really enjoy, but my favorite part is definitely the dice and card drafting. It is very similar in feel to the Magnificent, which was on my previous list. You can go ahead and check that out in the description. But on your turn, you're going to be playing over several phases. In the first phase, you're going to be drafting dice from a dice pool, which you roll at the beginning of each round. And you will draft a dice and put it into the castle of your color, and then you will place it out into one of 4 locations in the city. And depending on the value of the dice, it will tell you in what order you will draft when you resolve that section of the city during the card drafting phase. And it will also tell you the price that you are going to pay for the card that you draft. The AI player in this phase will flip over a card, and the card will determine if they are going to prioritize the dice color or the pip value during this drafting phase. If they're going to prioritize the pip value, you will roll a separate d6 and you will draft a die that is as close to that pip value as possible. If they're going to draft a specific color of dice, then you will look and see if there's only one, they will just draft that dice. If there's more than one, then you will roll a die and see which one is closest on pip values. The card will also tell you which section of the city they are going to place that dice in. And so there's a little bit of randomness there on which dice they're going to draft and where they're going to place it. After both you and the AI have selected and placed all 3 of your dice, then you'll go into phase 2, which is where you're going to actually draft the cards and pay for them. The AI will draft cards in the same order of, they will draft cards in the same order that you would normally as a multiplayer game. So in the first city, the lowest pip dice will be done first, up through the highest, and then in the lower cities you're going to work from the highest down to the lowest. The AI doesn't pay for anything, so they will simply roll either a d6 or a d4, whichever you have will work fine, and they will take one of the cards. When they take those cards, they will move up on the associated tracks and earn points that way, and you will earn points and move up on the tracks for the cards that you draft normally as well. But when you're drafting the cards, you are paying based on the pip value, based on the card type, whether it is coins or soldiers, which you're going to use as your currency. Then when you get into the third phase where you're activating your cards, the AI actually will not do anything. So this runs very smoothly. You're just doing the actions yourself and moving along the monastery path or taking other actions. And then the AI also is not going to earn any income during the income phase, but you will. And then you will also be able to fund voyages normally as you would in the multiplayer game. So there's only a few phases where the AI is going to be involved. And because of that, the AI will get a base score that they will start out with. And then you'll add any in-game scoring to it. And then you will add any points for where they're at on each of the tracks at the end of the game. So it's quite challenging, and I've found that the AI difficulty is fairly well done. I found that I could beat it sometimes, but not always, and the choices that I made definitely mattered, and you had to think through, when is the right time to take each of the different actions, when should you be purchasing and drafting those noble cards and adding those into your sets, or when should you be taking other actions from the upper city, when should you be focusing on that monastery track. And there's just a lot of really fun decisions to be made in Coimbra, and I really appreciate that someone came up with a solo mode so that I could try this one out. So if you have Coimbra sitting on your shelf at home and you haven't played it solo, I recommend you check out the solo mode from BGG, or if this was one you were on the fence about because it doesn't include solo out of the box, it's one that I have tried and really enjoyed. And if you like that dice drafting, card drafting, I would give this one a try. All right, we are at number 1, and coming in at number 1 on this second set is the Gallerist, designed by Vital Lacerda and published by Eagle Gryphon Games. The Gallerist is a worker placement game, which, as I've said, is one of my favorite mechanics in games and tends to work very well for solo modes. The Gallerist has a solo mode included in the base game box, so if you get the Gallerist, you will be able to play it solo. It is an objective-based solo mode, so it will give you specific scenarios in 3 different difficulty levels of criteria that you need to meet by the end of the game in order to consider your play a victory. And in the Gallerist, for the solo mode, you will be adding a player pawn to the board in a different player color that is just going to move around the board each turn in clockwise order to each of the different locations. And anytime that it moves, it will drop off one of its assistants in kind of a similar way that you can choose to leave an assistant behind when you move to a new space, but it will always do it. It will always leave an assistant behind. If at any point you go to a location and you kick out their assistant or the main pawn, then they will remove one of the tickets from the game, which is kind of a game timer. So when the tickets have run out, you are going to trigger a scoring round when I think 2 of the stacks have run out, and then when the 3rd stack runs out, that triggers the end of the game and you are done. So every time that you're kicking that AI player out, you are inching closer and closer to the end of the game, and you will get a very limited number of turns in the solo play for this one. The solo AI player will also, every time you come over to the, I think it's an auction, and I can't remember what all of the spaces are called, but when they get over into that kind of auction space, every time they go there, they will start filling in those spaces and taking away opportunities from you for the rest of the game. The challenge that's set out in each of the scenarios is actually very difficult. I played the first level of difficulty twice before I was able to beat it. And then the last 3 plays I was playing on the second or intermediate level of difficulty, and I have not beat that one yet. It is very challenging. Which is one of the things that I enjoy. It's not one that you're going to pick up and just it be a cakewalk through, and no matter what you do, you're going to come out ahead. You do have to very carefully plan out your moves. It is the heaviest game as far as complexity in my collection, and it was one that I did worry would be too difficult to play. And and maybe even too difficult to play solo, but I did not find that to be the case. If you have played, some medium weight games before and are familiar with kind of worker placement and some of the board game mechanisms, I think this is one that you could definitely get into if you're looking at the Vitala game and thinking, where is a good place to start? I think the Gallerist is a great place to start. The actions that you can take are limited. There are only 4 worker placement locations on the board, period. And at each of the locations, you can take one of 2 actions. And then you also, on your turn, will be able to take one of 2 executive actions. So all of the actions are actually quite simple. They're fairly intuitive based on the theme of the game. You are building up an art gallery, so you can go and commission artwork, discover and commission artwork from a new artist. You can go and just purchase artwork from an artist to display in your gallery. You can go and hire assistants. You can promote artists that have already been discovered and increase their prestige and their fame within the community. You can go and bid on auction works of art at an auction, which will resolve at the end of the game. You can go and get a contract for, procuring and selling a piece of art, or you can go and sell a piece of art. So all of the actions make sense, and all of the action locations are very simple and straightforward. The player aids that are included are very well done. So if you aren't quite sure what you're supposed to do at a specific location, because often the locations do include multiple steps once you get there, if you're going to, for example, commission a piece of art and discover a new artist, there's several steps that you need to go through and actions that you need to take, but they're all outlined on the player aids, and very simple and straightforward and smooth once you kind of get into it. So that is the Gallerist. It is definitely a challenging game. It will get your brain working. It will get you thinking. And it's one of those where you will feel the pressure from step 1, round 1, turn 1, all the way to the end of, can I get everything done in the amount of time that I have, which is certainly limited. And sometimes you can, and a lot of the times you can't, but it's always fun giving it a try. So that's my number 1 from this challenge, the Gallerist from Vitala. Okay, well that was my 10 games that I played in my second solo challenge of 2022, and these games have been a ton of fun, with the exception of Cellulose. This is the only one that will be leaving the collection. However, it is one that I would play again, both solo and multiplayer. If I get a chance to play it multiplayer, I will definitely take that chance and give it a try. So if any of these games appeal to you, I definitely recommend checking them out. If you've played any of these games, solo or multiplayer, leave a comment down below and tell me what you thought about it. And if there's anything in here that you see that you think I would like another game that you've played solo, give me some recommendations. The final solo challenge for 2022 runs from September to December, so I am working on that one right now. If you're interested in finding out what's on my current solo challenge, go ahead and check out my Instagram account with the link in the description, as I've shared the solo challenge there with all of my followers. That's it for today. Thanks so much for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And until next time, have fun playing games with your family or playing games solo. Bye.